Go ahead and get started today, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is MEFA's webinar on the CSS profile for students and families. My name is Meredith Barnhart. I am our Director of Communications. I'll be presenting today, and with me on the line is Julie Shields-Rutina. She's our Director of College Planning and Education. Julie will be going through and looking at anyone's questions. So if you have questions today, you can type them into your GoToWebinar panel in that questions box, and Julie will go through. She'll be just basically typing out some answers if there are some pretty simple answers that she can give you throughout the webinar. If there's any larger questions that would be better for discussion at the end, Julie will save those, and then at the end we'll go through any of those additional questions that weren't already answered by Julie. She might pop in and out here or there too if there's something that would be helpful to hear right in the moment that you ask that question. But otherwise, if you have questions, go ahead and type them into that questions panel, and we'll answer either those throughout by Julie or at the end. Everyone is muted on the webinar right now, just in case we can protect from any background noise. So again, this is the CSS Profile webinar presented by MEFA today. Just wanted to point out that GoToWebinar panel. So all of you should have this on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see the buttons on there too. We do have everyone muted. If we didn't, you could unmute and mute yourself, but we do have everyone muted for the webinar. If we ask any questions throughout the webinar, you can use that hand raise tool. You can see where those handouts are in that handout section, and then that questions box is where you're going to type in any questions that you have today. So for those who aren't aware of MEFA or really know much about MEFA, we're a not-for-profit organization. We've been around since 1982, and our sole purpose is really to help families like yours plan, save, and pay for college. And we do that through webinars like this, through our website. We have videos. We also have a new podcast. So there are a lot of ways that you can connect with us and receive this free college planning guidance. And we're guiding families who have newborns all the way through those who graduated from college and are in loan repayment. Today's webinar is all about the CSS profile, and that is a financial aid application for college. This is run by the College Board. That's that same organization that runs the SAT and the AP tests. The CSS profile is required by about 250 colleges and universities and scholarship programs across the US. If you need to know if a college or university requires the profile, you can simply go to that college's website, and on that website, look for the financial aid information and requirements, and you can see if the CSS profile is required. For the financial aid process, if you're applying for financial aid for college, every college requires the FAFSA. No matter if they require the profile or they don't, they require the FAFSA. So if you're applying for financial aid, you'll first need to fill out that FAFSA, send it to all the schools where the student is applying, and then you'll find out if schools require the profile in addition to the FAFSA. And then you can fill out the profile and send the profile along to those schools. A lot of private schools or some of the larger public schools require the profile, and a lot of schools in New England seem to require it. But remember, there's about 250 across the country. The profile is used by colleges and universities to award non-federal financial aid. So colleges are collecting FAFSA information, awarding their federal funds with that FAFSA information, and then they're using the profile to award their own financial aid, college and university financial aid. Even though a lot of the information that is collected on the profile is the same as the FAFSA, that other main application for financial aid, the profile has some more information that's collected, and we'll go through that, and colleges use that information to award their own financial aid funds. The profile, just like the FAFSA, becomes available October 1st every year, and so that's on Thursday. So for high school seniors applying to college for next year, October 1st, Thursday, you'll have the ability, your family, to complete the FAFSA and the profile. You don't have to do it right on October 1st, but we do really encourage families to complete it as soon as you can after October 1st. And the profile is an application available for both domestic and international students. The FAFSA is really just for domestic students, but the profile is for both domestic and international. So why do institutions use the profile? As I mentioned, it collects more information than the FAFSA. A lot of the information that's collected on the profile is the same. So maybe you'll do the FAFSA first, and then if you do the profile, you'll notice you're answering a lot of the same questions, but they are more detailed and there are more questions on the profile. The profile also allows schools to ask customized questions. So if I'm a college or university and I want to know something specific about all the families that are applying for financial aid, I can actually make up a question and add it to the profile. And any student who's filling out the profile for my school, applying to my college or university, they will receive that question. So schools like that, the ability to ask their own questions. And the profile also allows families like yours to write in special circumstances, basically to send a private note to the financial aid offices at the college and the universities that are receiving your profile. The FAFSA doesn't allow you to do that. You can always send a letter to all the financial aid offices after you submit the profile, after you submit the FAFSA, sorry, but on the profile, you can actually type in a note to the financial aid office, and all the schools that receive your profile will get that note, which is helpful. So if you need to fill out the profile to apply for financial aid, this is where you'll start. You can simply go to cssprofile.org and you'll see this home screen. When you look at the screen, you'll see at the top you can sign in to either fall 2021 or spring 2022. Sorry, you can fill in, you can click on fall 2021, spring 2022, or fall 2020, spring 2021. And if you are a family with a high school senior that's applying to college for next year, you'll want to select that fall 2020, spring 2022. You are basically applying for financial aid for the year during which your child will be in college. So that's that 21-22 year. So you'll click on that yellow box with the arrow pointing to it. You'll see at the top there's more information for certain populations of families. You've got those who might be interested in fee waivers, families that have divorced or separated parents, and then international applicants. Below the picture here on the left-hand side, you can see check participating schools and scholarships. And I'll show you what happens when you click on that button on the next screen. But basically, this is a list of almost the full list of colleges and organizations that require the profile. In the middle of the screen, you can see that text, learn how to apply. If you click on that, that's basically going to be an overview webinar about the profile. So similar to this profile webinar, a little bit less detailed, but if you want just another quick overview of the profile, you can click on that. And then there's some information completing the CSS profile for the non-custodial parent. And we'll go more into that as we go through the webinar today. There's also some more information at the bottom, a few different site topics, and you'll see those are all the same as at the top. So right when you get to this home screen, there's a lot of great information. Spend a few minutes here and click on any buttons that really apply to your family and your situation so you can get all the information you need before you get started. Down at the bottom of the homepage, there are some additional resources. Information about creating a CSS profile account for parent use, information for non-custodial parents, fee waivers, and a student guide. Basically, when you start the profile, which we'll talk about, you have to create an account. You can start the profile through a student account, or you can create a new account under the parent's name. Most students actually already have an account on the College Board web system, and it's because they've taken the SAT or perhaps taken an AP test. Students already have that College Board login. So if you'd like, when you're starting the profile, you can log in under the student's College Board login and start the profile. And that's an easy way to do it. You can have your student sit next to you, have your student log himself into the College Board web portal or web system, and you can fill out the CSS profile that way. Some parents really don't want to log in under their student's account. They want to start their own account and start the CSS profile without having to bother their student with logging into his or her account. In that case, students need to, you can click on this button here to get more information, but parents, if you want to create your own account and fill out the profile under your own account, you actually need to create a student account, and it's a little bit confusing, but that's how the College Board works, and that's how this profile application works. So again, you can fill out the profile under the student's College Board account, have the student login, and fill out the CSS profile that way. Or parents, if you want your own account in this CS profile system, in this College Board system, you'll create your own account and you'll actually create a student account. You'll put your information, your name, your address, your email address, but it will be under the student account section. And for more information on that, you can, again, click on that button on the home page, creating a CSS profile account for parent use. As I mentioned, there are a list of participating institutions and programs. And if you click that button on the home page that says participating schools and programs, you will get to this list. This is almost a comprehensive list of schools and agencies that use the profile. However, it is not required for schools to put themselves on this list. So there are sometimes a handful of schools who, for different reasons, have chosen not to display themselves on this list. So this list is helpful for a quick spot check, but really, if you're applying to college and you want to know if a college requires the profile, the best thing to do is go to that college's financial aid website. So go to the college's website, find the financial aid section, and look up the required applications and see if the CSS profile is listed. If it is, you need to do that CSS profile, even if the school doesn't appear on this list. But if we look at this list here, you can see that there's an institution name, and to the left of that name is a CSS code. So every school has a CSS code. It shows the state where the institution is listed, if the CSS profile is used for domestic students, if it's used for international students, and if it is required for non-custodial parents. And again, we'll get back more into non-custodial parents in just a few minutes. There is also a column to show if the college or university uses IDOC. That's basically a scanning service, and we'll talk more about the IDOC system just a little bit later as well. So wanted to share some information about the application process. Again, you're going to go to cssprofile.org to start the CSS profile, and you'll need to sign in. You can use the Student's College Board account, and again, that would be from the SATs or the AP tests. Or you can create a new student account using parents' information. So parents, you're basically going to click on create new student account, put in your information. Even though it says enter the student's information, you're going to put your information as the parent, your name, your email address, etc. And that will be your College Board account. A separate College Board account is needed for each student. So if you have twins, you're going to have to do that profile under 2 separate accounts. As you go through the CSS profile, there will be a left-hand sidebar that's going to show the different sections of the application. If you've done the FAFSA ever, you know that the tabs are at the top. For the CSS profile, the tabs are on the left-hand side. As you go through the application, there is smart logic. So basically, the application is learning more about you, adding sections as they're needed, and taking away sections that aren't needed. So as you go through the application, you might see new sections pop up that you need to complete based on the information that you've already submitted. You are permitted to jump ahead to different sections in the profile. So perhaps you have all of your asset information already and you want to type that in before you do anything else. You can jump ahead, fill in that information, and then jump back. Just like many websites, there's a save and continue button, and you're going to click that as you move through to each new section. As you complete each section of the profile, the section will be checked on the left-hand sidebar to show you that it's been completed. So if you answer all the questions and you move on to the next section and you're finished with one section, you'll see that check lets you know you're all set. Just like the FAFSA, you don't have to do the profile all in one sitting. So you can start answering some questions. If you're not sure of some answers or you just don't have time to do the whole application, you can save it and then come back later to finish it. When you do log back in, the profile will send you right back to the section where you stopped, which is helpful. You don't have to jump around. You can go right back to where you stopped and then keep completing the application. Just some more general tips. Again, you're going to click that save and continue button and then close your browser whenever you're done for the day or for that time being completing the application. As you navigate through the application, and this is like many websites, go ahead and use the arrows within the application, not your browser back button. You want to stay within that application and use those arrows they provide. That's just going to make it easier for you to navigate your way through that application. If you're answering a question and you actually click into that answer box, some tips will appear for most questions, and they're just going to help you answer the question. If you're a little unsure of what exactly you're supposed to put for a question, put your cursor right in that answer box and click, and some tips will likely appear. Like many applications, anything with an asterisk is required, so make sure you do complete that or you'll be prompted to put in an answer. Do put in answers that you have, even if something is not required. The CSS profile does not actually require the student's social security number, but it is helpful for you to put in that SSN for the student because the college or university will have an easier time matching that student's CSS profile to their FAFSA and to their admissions application and really to their account at that school. So if you get to a question, it's not required, but you do have an answer for it, go ahead and type that in. And if something doesn't apply to you, just go ahead and leave it blank. Similar to the FAFSA, the profile is going to ask for parent information, but different from the FAFSA, the profile wants information for all of the parents of the student, and that could be up to 4. It wants both biological or adoptive parents, and if those parents have divorced and are now remarried, the profile is going to ask for those new step parents as well. Even if a parent is deceased, profiles would still like that parent's information. Different than the FAFSA, if there is a student who has a legal guardian, that legal guardian should put in his information as the parent. So if I'm a legal guardian to a student and she's applying to college, I'm going to fill out the profile and I'm going to put my information as the legal guardian, my income, my assets. That is different from the FAFSA. The FAFSA doesn't actually require parent information if there's a legal guardian situation. But on the profile, legal guardians are going to act as the parent and fill in their information. If there is a divorced or separated situation with a student, just like the FAFSA, the student needs to determine their custodial parent. And that's the parent that the student has lived with the most over the past 12 months. That parent will put his or her information on the FAFSA along with that parent's current spouse. So as an example, if I'm a student, my parents are divorced and I live with my dad, and I see my biological mom on the weekend, she's still in my life, but I live with my dad. My dad and I are going to complete this CSS profile. If my dad is remarried, let's say I have a stepmother, my stepmother is also going to put her information on the CSS profile. So when I fill out the profile, I'll put my information, my dad, and my stepmom. I will list on the profile that I do have this biological mom and I'll put her information. But when I'm answering parent, income, and asset questions, I'm just going to put the information for my dad and my stepmom. That's who I live with. That CSS profile that I complete, I'm also going to list all of my colleges on that main CSS profile. Now, my non-custodial parent, in my example, that's my mom, she's going to fill out her own profile. And she won't have to provide the list of colleges where I'm applying. So I'm only going to put that on that main profile. Some schools do require that non-custodial parent profile and others do not. So it's really up to the college whether or not they're asking for non-custodial parent information. Many do, some do not. So again, if I'm this student living with my dad and my stepmom, and let's say I'm applying to 4 different schools that require the profile, I need to go to the financial aid website of those 4 colleges, and I need to find out if they require information from my non-custodial parent, my mom. If they do, my mom needs to fill out her own profile, and it will be under her name, and she'll put her information in there. When I fill out the profile, I'm going to put the email address of my mom. And often, if I put in the email address, the CSS profile will prompt my mom to fill out her own profile. So that's helpful. It's just another gentle reminder. It is my responsibility as the student to make sure that everyone who needs to fill out the profile fills it out. So if I'm filling out the profile with my dad and my non-custodial mom needs to fill it out, the profile is going to email her and let her know, but it's my responsibility to follow up with her. And you can see, as I pointed out on the homepage, there is a section for divorced or separated families. That just gives more information about this process, helpful for any families that have those divorced or separated parents. So we have some instructions for those non-custodial parents. Again, they'll receive an email. So in my example, my mom would receive an email requesting her to submit her own CSS profile. She'll use that same website, cssprofile.org. She'll have to create her own College Board account. So again, she'll create really a student account, but it'll be under her name. She'll use my CB FinAid ID. So every student that completes the profile has this ID. It's called this CB FinAid ID. When my mom gets that email saying, go ahead and complete the profile, it will include that ID number so that when she goes to complete her own profile, she can put that in so that her profile links with my custodial parents' profile. The parents don't see each other's information, so that is kept separate, but they do need to both complete their income and their asset bill and all their information on their own CSS profile. When my mom, my non-custodial parent, fills out her profile, she doesn't have to put much information about me, the student. She'll put my name and identifying information, but she won't have to put my financial information all over again because my dad, when he filled out that main profile with me, we already listed my student financial information. My mom will see on her non-custodial profile the colleges where I'm applying, so she'll see that list. She won't be able to edit it, but she'll see that list. And we'll talk about fee payment codes. There is a fee associated with submitting the profile, and there are some fee payment codes and fee waivers that are available. So we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. If I am a student and my parents are divorced or separated, and there is a college or university requiring me to submit a profile for my non-custodial parent, and I'm not really in touch with that parent, I don't have contact information for that parent, I can't get in touch with that parent, I need to send an explanation to all of the schools that are requiring that non-custodial parent information. I need to explain the relationship or the lack of the relationship with the non-custodial parent and ask for a waiver of that requirement. And that is very important. If a non-custodial parent profile is required and I don't submit one, that means my application for financial aid is incomplete. So if you are a family where the non-custodial parent is not in the picture, not in contact with the student does need to actively contact all those colleges and explain the situation and ask them to waive that requirement. So there is some general information that's requested on the profile, and this is similar to the FAFSA. Students will list the colleges where they're applying to college, and they only need to list those colleges that require the profile. If they're applying to some schools that don't require the profile, they don't need to list them on the profile. Parents and students will report their 2019 income information, and this is similar to the FAFSA. So this is for profiles for the 2021-2022 academic year. So high school seniors applying to college for next year. They'll be asked to report their 2019 income information for themselves and for parents. Parents and students on the profile will also be asked to report their projected income. What do they think they'll be making in 2020, this year, and next year, 2021? Parents and students will have to report their assets, and that's similar to the FAFSA. The questions on what's required is a little bit different. We'll go into that. Their household member information, so who lives in their household, and then the number of children attending college. As I mentioned earlier, the profile asks a lot of similar questions to the FAFSA, but there are more questions. The questions are more detailed, and really this gives colleges and universities a better ability to estimate how much families can pay. And that is for college costs for 1 year. That's what they're trying to determine. In the parent income section, parents will be asked to provide information about their untaxed Social Security benefits, their earned income credit, additional child tax credit, and foreign income exclusion. These are bits of information that are not asked for on the FAFSA. So the profile is going to ask for all the same information that's on the FAFSA. The income, the salary, what was on the W-2, the taxes paid, untaxed information. But in addition to all that information that your family has already reported on the FAFSA, it's going to ask for these additional bits of information for parent income. In the assets section, as parents go through and report their assets, There are, again, some bits of information that are requested that are not requested on the FAFSA. On the profile, families need to report the value and debt of their primary home. This is not reported on the FAFSA. They'll also have to list all business and farm information, the value of every business they own, every farm they own. On the FAFSA, some businesses and farms are excluded, but on the CSS profile, every bit of information about a business or a farm is collected. Parents are also asked to report any assets held in siblings' names. So that's basically if you're a parent and you have put money under one of your children's names. Perhaps you have a bit of money that you're saving, but instead of putting it under your own name, you've put it under a child's name, maybe for tax purposes. The profile does want to know that. If it is that child's money, doesn't have to report that. Let's say that's a sibling of the student applying. But if you have a parent, have saved money and put it under one of your children's names, you will be asked to report that. And you will be asked of your retirement value. What is the value of your retirement? This is not asked for on the FAFSA. Profile wants to know what is the amount of money sitting in your official retirement account or accounts. Now, many schools don't use this information. They might spot check, see how much money you have sitting in retirement, but they don't use that information in the calculation to determine how much financial aid you are eligible to receive. Really depends on the school, but you will be asked to report that information. And then as well, parents will be asked to report their expenses. And this is information that will help you in the financial aid process. If you are paying medical and dental expenses, if you have private school tuition that you're paying, maybe for elementary or secondary school, if you're paying off an education loan yourself or for maybe an older sibling of the student, you'll be asked to report all that. And that's going to help you because then the college will know that some of your money is already earmarked for these other expenses. Additionally, when you're asked of family data, you'll be asked to report the ages of all the siblings of the student. On the FAFSA, you're simply asked for the household size, but in the profile, you're asked to give a bit more information. So you'll be asked of the ages of the students' siblings, and then the colleges that the students are, or the siblings are attending if they are going to be in college next year. Student data, students will be asked to list any private scholarships that they have already earned, and if they're receiving any employee tuition benefits. So that's some extra information you'll need to know. For private scholarships, you don't have to list any scholarships the student has applied for and that you haven't received word from. Only those private scholarships that students have already earned. They've already been told they have this money coming for college. And then, as I mentioned, there's this ability for families to list special circumstances right into the profile. If you have something you want to communicate to the financial aid office, maybe there's something a little bit different with your income or your household size, you can go ahead and type that into this special circumstances box. This will appear after certain questions in the profile application and then all the way at the end. There will be categories that you can select. That's basically the category of your special circumstances. And then you'll be asked to explain more. What exactly do you want to communicate to the financial aid offices? This is where you might want to tell them if you've had a recent dip in income, if you have any exceptional expenses, maybe you had to buy a new roof this year or do a major renovation to your home for one reason or another. Those are things you want to mention to the financial aid office. If something happens after you submit the profile, you've already submitted it online, go ahead and send that information directly to the college or university. And as I mentioned, schools have the ability to add supplemental questions, personal questions to anyone applying to their college or university. So you might have some of these. You'll be told which college or university is requesting these questions to be answered by you. And sometimes these questions aren't actually required, but we always recommend that you go ahead and answer them. It's just going to help the college or university really figure out that your true eligibility for financial aid according to their own formula. So as I said earlier, there is a fee to complete the CSS profile. It's $25 to complete the application and submit it to one school, and then it's $16 to send it to each additional school. And these are paid for by you, the family. You can pay with a credit or a debit card. When the non-custodial parent completes a profile, there's just a one-time $25 fee. So even if 4 schools are asking the non-custodial parent to complete the profile and submit it, there will only be one $25 charge for that non-custodial parent. Now, there are fee waivers for certain populations, and these are automatically granted. So when you go through the profile, you'll be told if you've been granted a fee waiver and you don't have to pay the fee to submit the CSS profile. And these are given to families with low income, and that's usually parent income of around $45,000 combined, $45,000 or less. If the student is an orphan or a ward of the court and also under the age of 24, students who received an SAT fee waiver. If you've already received an SAT fee waiver, you'll receive a fee waiver to fill out the CSS profile. And then anyone in a FEMA designated disaster area, those people will automatically receive a fee waiver. These are only available for domestic, not international students. And it's only available to students applying for freshman year. You'll fill out the profile for freshman year. If you go to a college that requires the profile, it may require you to submit it every year, sophomore, junior, senior year, to apply for financial aid for those years. If you received a fee waiver for freshman year, you will have to pay to submit the profile for subsequent years. You can use your fee waiver for an unlimited number of schools. So if you qualify for a fee waiver, you can then submit the profile to as many schools as you want without a charge. And for non-custodial parents, they'll receive a fee waiver if they meet those same income guidelines as listed above. There's also something called fee payment codes. And these are codes that are purchased usually by high schools or college access organizations that can be given to students. So perhaps there's maybe a high school that has purchased some basically CSS profile fee payment codes, and they can give those codes to students, and those codes pay for one submission. So if I'm a student who needs to submit the profile to 2 schools and I'm not able to pay, but my high school is offering fee payment codes, I would need 2 of those codes to submit the profile to those 2 colleges. And there's no limit on how many of these codes you can use. So as the parent and student sit down together, they'll fill out the application, the income, the assets, the household size, and the number of students in college. Once they go through and they submit the profile, they will have the chance to review the application, and they'll be prompted if there's anything that seems inconsistent or possible errors. The application will prompt the family and ask them to look at that question again, look at their answers, and make sure their answers are accurate. You'll also have the ability as a family to print your answers if needed. So if you want to just save all your answers, you'll have the ability to do that. You'll need to check a box to make sure everything is certified as accurate. And then at this point, this is when you'll be able to pay and your fee waivers will be shown. Once you do submit the profile to the schools that you have listed, you can't make any online edits or delete any schools. So those schools will be sent the information as you submitted it. If you do have a correction, you put something in wrong or something changed, you'll have to print out your answers, correct your answers, and actually send that information over email or fax or mail to each college and university that's collecting your profile data so that they have that updated information. So unlike the FAFSA where you can actually make corrections on the online FAFSA, with the CSS profile, once you've submitted it, you can't make corrections. So you'll have to then contact the schools that you want to receive this updated information. Throughout the profile, you'll see there's an opportunity to look at the dashboard of the student. You can access this anytime, and you'll see a tab on the top right of the application where you can click on and get to the student's dashboard. This is going to include a lot of information that is tied to the student. The application status at every school. So maybe you have 5 schools listed and you've submitted the profile to 4, it'll show that. It's going to show each college's submission date, so when they received the CSS profile, if you sent it, their deadline for financial aid, and any additional documents they require, as well as next steps required by every school. There is a payment receipt, so if you have paid, you will be able to show that you have paid. They'll see that receipt on that screen. This is where you can go in and save or print your application as well. So if you submit the profile and then you decide, no, I do want a hard copy or I want to save this to my own hard drive, you can go ahead and do that from the dashboard. This is also where you can add a college or a program. So you can complete the profile. Let's say you list 3 colleges, you submit it, and then you decide a few weeks later I want to apply to one more school. You can go into your dashboard, add that additional school, and that's where you'll pay that additional fee. This is where you'll also link to IDOC, and I'll talk about IDOC in just a minute. That's that scanning service that I mentioned earlier. And here you'll also have the ability to add the non-custodial parent's email address. So when the student's filling out the application, they'll list all their parents, as I mentioned. Here on this dashboard, you can add your non-custodial parent's email address, and they can receive that email prompting them to fill out their own CSS profile. Also on the dashboard, that's where you'll receive that ID number, the student CB FinAid ID. So IDOC, it stands for the College Board's Institutional Documentation Service, and this is a scanning service. Some colleges and universities require separate documentation, and they use that information when assessing each student's eligibility for financial aid. So a lot of schools use this service, it's called IDOC, and it collects these family documents that the school wants to collect on behalf of the school. So basically, the school is hiring IDOC to collect the information that it wants to receive. The IDOC website, which is listed at the bottom here, idoc.collegeboard.com, that has a separate dashboard for students, and it will tell students of the required documents for every school. So basically, if I'm a student and I'm applying to 3 schools and 2 of those schools use IDOC and they're requesting additional information, maybe they want a copy of my parents' tax return or they want a copy of my W-2 form, they will instruct me to go over to IDOC, get onto my IDOC dashboard, and on that IDOC dashboard, it will list the schools to which I'm applying and those basically the documentations that they're requiring. And then I can use IDOC to upload the information, those tax returns, W-2 forms. I'll upload that information into IDOC, and then IDOC will electronically send that information over to the schools requiring that information. So instead me having to mail that documentation to those 2 schools, I'll just upload it into IDOC, and IDOC takes care of delivering it to those 2 colleges. Any documents that you upload into IDOC must be a JPEG, a TIFF, or PDF format, and you can actually use your phone to take a picture. So IDOC tries to make it pretty easy for you to collect information. Either you can upload PDFs that you might already have on your computer, or if you have documentation sitting in front of you, you can take a picture of it and upload it from your phone. If there is documentation required that has a signature line, for example, your tax return, if you haven't yet signed that tax return, go ahead and do that before you submit that documentation. IDOC is part of the College Board, but it has its own customer service line, which is helpful. So you see that phone number on the screen, and then again, that IDOC website is idoc.collegeboard.com. If you're not sure if you're supposed to use IDOC, once you go through the profile and you're on the student's profile dashboard, you'll be told what schools use IDOC. So you'll see a list of schools, if they're using IDOC, what documentation is required. As well, most colleges and universities will contact you, let you know we use IDOC and we are requesting this certain documentation from you. So you will be notified. There is an IDOC overview. If you are required to use IDOC and you're still not sure exactly how it works, you can go to these slides here on the College Board website and just get a quick overview of how this IDOC service works. The CSS profile does have a customer support center. If you select Contact Us anywhere in the application, you'll get to this page. You'll see there's FAQs listed. And then if you select that center tab, Contact Us, you'll get the phone number, the hours of the application support center, and there's a chat feature. And that chat will show it's unavailable if obviously there's no one available to answer the chat, but the chat is often available. So if you have some quick questions, you can go to the support center page, click on the chat, and go ahead and type them in. As well, there is an email address that families can use. It's finaidservices@collegeboard.org. That's the email address you see on your screen. So if you want to send an actual email to Profile Customer Service, you can do that as well. As I pointed out on the home screen, there is a CSS Profile Overview. That is similar to this webinar that you're in right now, a little bit less information, but if you want to make sure you have everything covered, you have all the information you need before you fill out the profile, you can go through this overview, and it's basically just another shorter webinar. There's also CSS Profile Student Guide. This is a one-pager with very basic information about the profile. A lot of counselors print out this guide and give it to their students or to their families. You could probably just click on that student guide and look through it. And again, all the information on that guide was in this webinar today. It's just basic information about when the profile becomes available and who requires it and the process of completing it. So here are some things that you can do now. Go ahead and look at college admissions and financial aid timeline. That's on MEFA.org. That's just a timeline that we provide for high school seniors. The timeline is separated by season. It actually starts in spring of junior year, the student's junior year. But this is a really helpful timeline for families as they're going through the college admissions and financial aid process, just to make sure they don't forget anything. Go ahead and research the deadlines at every school and the required applications. So as your son or daughter creates the college list, or if you're a student on the webinar today and you're creating your college list, as you write down the colleges where you are applying, keep track of the applications required in regards to financial aid. So every college will require the FAFSA. Write down the application requirements. Anyone requires the CSS profile and the deadlines. It is so important to apply for financial aid on time. Make sure you apply on time, and we always recommend apply for financial aid really as soon as you can. So on October 1st, the FAFSA and the CSS profile will become available, and at that point you can go ahead and apply for financial aid. If you'd like to attend other MEFA webinars, we have plenty coming up. You can go to our events page, mefa.org/events. And go ahead on October 1st, on Thursday, you can start completing those applications. Do remember to do the FAFSA. Many families are so vigilant with getting everything done for the CSS profile, but make sure you submit the FAFSA and really send that to every school, college and university to which the student is applying. We always recommend that families connect with us on social media. We send out scholarships, tips, college planning tools. We're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we do have a YouTube channel as well with recordings of webinars like this one, as well as a lot of videos on different college planning topics. So that concludes our webinar today on the CSS profile. If you have to jump off but think you might have questions coming up in the future, you're welcome to call this 800 number. That's our customer service team, 800-449-MEFA. And then we have an email address as well. We answer those emails almost as soon as they come in, collegeplanning@mefa.org. And we appreciate any feedback. You're welcome to email us any feedback from the webinar today, or leave us a Google review at any point.
And Meredith, we do have some great questions, so I think we have a little time for that, if that's
Great.
Good. And I'm going to try to group. Try to group them because a lot of people ask similar questions. So let me say the first question is about, you've mentioned, completing these forms as soon as possible after October 1st. But there are a number of questions just asking, what is the drawback? Do we need to rush, or can we wait until November or December? What are the pros and cons of completing this form earlier or later? And the couple of reasons people have cited might be that maybe the student doesn't know what colleges they're applying to yet, or definitely doesn't know all of them. Or the second being that there are definitely going to be special circumstances, but those circumstances may change and evolve. So pros and cons of completing it sooner rather than later. With all of that.
That's a great question. So there are some colleges and universities that tell students to complete the financial aid applications as soon as possible because they do run out of funds. So they want to make sure that students do apply and get the financial aid funds before they run out. So as a general rule, we tell families complete those applications as soon as you can. Now, if you can't complete it in the first or second week of October, toward the end of October is still fine. Toward the beginning of November, do make sure you meet all deadlines. So especially if you have a student who's applying early action or early decision to a college or university, your financial aid deadline might be November 1st or November 15th. So definitely make sure you submit all applications before that date. That is so important, as deadlines are taken very seriously by the financial aid office. So one, make sure you do submit everything prior to the deadlines. But if you're not sure of where the student is applying, let's say you're considering a college and you're not sure, make sure you do look up that college's deadline. let's say that deadline is November 1st or November 15th, go ahead and submit the application. If you end up not applying to that school, they'll just remove your information. Now, of course, the profile does come with a cost, so you do want to narrow down that college list and make your determination of where the student will likely apply so that you're not spending money that you don't need to be spending. But if there is a school you're considering, go ahead and submit that application before the deadline, just in case that student does apply. And it's funny, sometimes the deadlines are earlier than the admissions deadlines, but just look up those financial aid deadlines, and the best thing to do is make sure you apply before those.
That's great. And then there's another grouping of questions centered around, is it better to just use my student's credentials and complete the form that way, or create my own account as a parent? And a couple of the reasons asked about were, what if I have twins? Does it make it easier just to have my own account? Or another question was about, well, what if I have a second child coming up in a year? Is it better to have my own account? So do you have any thoughts about which is better? Oh, one more, and the security of information. So, the student being able to see the parent information, that was a factor too.
Right, and that's probably the main reason that I think most parents complete or create their own College Board account. So if you're okay with your student seeing your financial information, or you don't think the student will ever log in, you can go ahead and complete the profile under the student's College Board account. It's probably easier than creating your own account. Just have your student log you in and then complete the profile that way. But if you really don't want your student to see your financial information, to view anything that's on the profile, that's when you would create your own College Board account. And you would need to create a different account for twins. So maybe if you have twins, you do the profile under both the students' accounts, or you do one profile under one student's account, and then you create your own account for the other student. But definitely, the main reason I think that most people create their own account as a parent in the College Board is because they don't want their students to view their profile information. So if that's the case, go ahead and create your own account.
Thank you. And now I have a very specific question. So we'll go the other way. The questions that refer to income from work, and they ask for 2019 information, 2020 information, is that a gross income figure, or does it include the Medicare wages, which take health insurance into consideration? What box on the W-2 basically is the profile looking for? And I know that the form gives a lot of detailed help, but this person is saying that he can't find the exact, he doesn't know exactly what to put in that information, in that question.
Yeah, and the income earned, so it's usually, that's a great question. They do direct you to the box to use the income earned, and I'm trying to remember, Julie, do you remember if it does include, for example, if it is gross or if it's net?
So I don't, and that's why I wrote and said that I thought that it would give the help on the box, but you know what? We'll research that, and we will get back to you on that one. I think that's good. That's a hard question. You stumped us.
Yeah. That's a great question. And usually, just like the FAFSA, the profile should tell you, as we've gone through and helped families either on the FAFSA or the profile, it should direct you to the exact box. And because some of these questions are pretty specific, it's asking about, earned income from work, and then your adjusted gross income, and basically different items on your tax return. So it should direct you to either the line on your tax return or the line on your W-2. But we'll look at that. And find out, and we can contact you directly, whoever asked that question.
That's great. And I think you covered some of this, but we'll mention it again. The idea that the student doesn't have any contact with the other parent, and the other parent refuses to complete this form. Maybe you can reiterate some of the suggestions about how to go about that.
Right. So for anyone who has a non-custodial parent, it can be a tricky situation if that parent does not want to fill in the information or can't provide the information. Unfortunately, it's going to be up to each college and university to determine if you do have to provide that non-custodial parent information. If it's a situation where you're not in touch with that parent, that's one situation. If it's a situation where you're in touch with that parent, but the parent simply refuses to provide information on that CSS profile, that might be a little bit tricky for the family. And it would just be if the custodial parent refused to fill out that CSS profile for the student. The best thing for the family to do is to communicate to each financial aid office the entire situation. So provide as much detail as you're comfortable providing, provide any documentation that you have, and just let each financial aid office know that is requiring, those offices that are requiring the non-custodial parent profile, explain to them why you can't submit a profile from that non-custodial parent. Explain to each office, they will get back to you. It might be the case that some offices do waive that and tell you you don't have to submit information for the non-custodial parent, and others might tell you it is required. And if they do require it, you do have to submit that information in order to apply for financial aid. But if you have specific questions, go ahead and reach out to the financial aid office at any of the schools. They might be able to provide you some tips of what exactly to include in your letter or your email explaining your situation, and they might give you an idea of whether or not their school would be able to waive that requirement.
Thank you. And I think lastly, or getting near the end, can you just talk about the parent situation, divorced or separated, and the children are 50-50 exactly? How do they pick a custodial parent?
Yep. So what we always say is when you're figuring out the custodial parent, figure out who the student lived with the most over the last 12 months. If that is 50-50, figure out which parent provided more financial support. So sometimes that's helpful to families. Maybe one parent provided more financial support than the other because of income situations or an agreement that's been made. If it really is completely even, the student spends half the time with each parent, really it's down the middle which parent is providing, who's providing more financial support. Maybe it's completely equal. Really, then you just have to pick a parent. So pick a parent as your custodial parent, and for ease of this entire process through the next 4 years, try to keep that parent the same for every application. So maybe I'm a student, I live with my dad half the time, my mom half the time, they both really cover my finances pretty evenly. I just need to pick someone, either my mom or my dad, make that my custodial parent throughout the application process.
Thank you. And can you speak to the security of the information on this form?
Yep, so just like the FAFSA, though that's a federal form, schools are keeping this information under lock and key. This is a secure form, and obviously parents need to know that because you're submitting so much of your personal information, but the College Board goes to great measures to make sure this is secure. And again, if you submit this information to a school and you end up not applying to that school, or the student ends up not applying, then that school is basically going to electronically shred your information. So they're going to get rid of that information. They're not going to use it for anything. So know that you can submit this information securely as you're filling out the profile online.
And another question about a divorced parent situation. How do the student and the custodial parent know that the other parent completed the profile and know that the application is set if they don't have direct contact with that other parent? Should they contact the school?
Yeah, so students can look on their College Board, on their dashboard, on their profile dashboard, to see that all the information has been submitted, that there's any additional information that they need to submit. So students really go back to your dashboard, and parents go back to that dashboard and see what else is required. And you can also always call those financial aid offices at the school, give them the student's identifying information, maybe the student's ID that's already been established, that university ID, or even the student's SSN, and the school can let you know, that financial aid office can let you know if anything else is required, like that non-custodial parent profile.
All right, and I think I'll ask this as the last question. And it is there an, once you complete the CSS profile and send your information in, is there an easy way to make any changes to the form all at once, or do you need to contact each school directly?
Yeah, you really need to contact each school directly. So let's say you fill out the profile, you submit it, and you put by accident an extra 0 listed on all your assets, or you put in student information for parent information, or vice versa. You really do have to contact the schools. Unfortunately, you can't go into the profile electronically after you've submitted it and change information and resend it to those same schools. You really have to contact the schools, let them know what changed. They might require some documentation or some type of signed statement, but you do need to do that. And it does look like, Julie, that our colleague Gail Holt, who is the absolute expert on the CSS profile, let us know that that question earlier of earned income, you do grab the gross income amount from box 1 of your W-2. So when you're looking for your earned income, go to your W-2, that statement of your earnings, and grab that information from box 1 right at the top.
So wonderful. That's great. Well, I think we've answered most of the questions, and you know, there is that follow-up telephone number and email there as well. Thank you, Meredith.
Great. So thanks everyone for joining today. And right, as Julie mentioned, please reach out to us, call us or email us anytime. If we missed your question especially, or if I didn't answer something in full and you have follow-up questions, definitely contact us. We've got a whole team, and we're happy to answer any questions as you go through this whole process over the next few months. And we invite you again to future webinars. We have several webinars coming out, so just head to our events page and you can register for those. So thanks everyone for joining. We hope you have a great day.